All right, we got a couple of marquee games coming up for the weekend. The big one in the NFL is on Sunday. You got the Broncos traveling out to New England and Foxborough to play the Patriots. They are a road favorite here. Patriots are a rare home dog. Denver 3 total went up from 54 to 55.5. Do have to mention the weather though. 38 degrees in Foxborough for this game. 80% chance of rain. There are reports of some snow that might happen, about a 40% chance. 19-mile-an-hour winds. Certainly pay attention to the weather. Brady versus Manning. Brady is 10-5 against Peyton Manning. They played twice last year. Denver won the playoff game 26-16. The earlier game in November on this field was a 34-31 shootout. Hollis, the Denver team looks like the best team in the AFC. On one hand, they're 5-0 at home and only 1-1 on the road.
Well, I'll tell you what, Denver, how can you find anything to criticize Denver with? And the same thing with the way New England's playing. 3 or 4 weeks ago, New England just got totally embarrassed at Kansas City. And I was one of those guys that said, hey, maybe Brady is past his time. Maybe this is, we saw him at his best, and this is his downslide. And then he came back and played, Cincinnati? And then 2 weeks ago, I flew back to Buffalo to see him play Buffalo Bills, and he looked absolutely fantastic. I think he threw 5 touchdowns. Last week, he looked even better. I think he threw another 4 or 5 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is just amazing. I tip my hat. Last year, they were down 24-0 when they played Denver, and everything fell apart the second half and ended up in overtime. I almost want to say Denver won that game, but yet, they really didn't. Then they got in the AFC title game where we saw Denver win 26-16. Now, I'm going to take a look at the over and under. If you go back the last 3 years, any game that Manning's been involved in or Brady's been involved in, actually home games for Brady in the last, 4 or 5 years, Manning the last 3 years, they've had 65 games go over. And a lot of people think that anytime Denver plays, it's an over. Anytime New England plays, it's an over. So therefore, if you put both these teams, it's an over. Well, it's my experience when you get 2 high-scoring teams that meet, is very, very rare that both teams play perfect. Sometimes the defenses just counteract because they're both very good teams. Remember, the overs that we've accumulated, 37-17 for the last 54 home games for Brady, they were not against the best teams or teams of their own caliber. They were just with anybody, like when Buffalo was playing bad, Jets were playing bad, whoever else came in there, and they just, were able to put a lot of scores. But I'm definitely going to take the under. I know the line's gone from 53 to 54 to 55.5. I wasn't even factoring in the weather or anything. I just don't think you put these 2 teams together and both of them play to that type of peak and you get the greatest game of all time. There's always one team that gets a little bit disappointed and that just doesn't go their way. So let's look at the under, and I'm not a big under fan, but let's look at the under 55.5, and who knows, maybe the weather will help us, stall one drive and it'll get there very, very easily. But that's my play for this game.
All right, here's a Denver team that since Peyton Manning got there 28-14-2 over the total. When they face a team with a winning record, 27-7 over the total. However, all those games weren't played in windy, snowy conditions like this. Meanwhile, you get this Patriot team that started off terrible on offense in September, but since then, 4-game winning streak. They scored 43, 37, 27, and 51 points. They're now up to 10th in the NFL in passing. Amazing when you think back to all the problems they had on the offensive line in September. So, Zach, here's Brady and Belichick, a rare home dog. Is that a red flag? Should Denver be favored?
Well, they should be favored. They've got the best talent in football all around, but that doesn't always translate onto the field when the game starts and finishes. So, Denver, they're a great team, but I have to take in the Peyton Manning factor outdoors. Up in that region he hates to play in. Even this year, they just played a game at New York, and Peyton Manning wasn't his usual self. He did get a couple touchdowns, but backers of the Broncos will remember they got the cover only because of a Geno Smith pick 6 in the final 14 seconds. So obviously the Jets defense isn't close to what New England is, and that team's in total disarray. But you have to also look at the matchup here. New England, Denver, it's so back and forth in their matchups. Remember the AFC Championship game a few years ago? Peyton Manning had to fire away to get his first Super Bowl coming back, and then last year the Patriots came back from whatever that score was to come back and win that game. So they have some great matchups, and it's very hard to handicap this game. But if I was going to take a pick on this one, I would take New England, and I just think they have something going offensively, a little bit better balance for a home team right now, and it really is a toss-up. I could see this game going either way, especially on a Tuesday when we're recording here. But factor in the weather. My advice would be not to play it if you're going to handicap it with money, but my lean would be small on New England, just plus the points.
All right, I'm going to take a look at the total in this one, and I'm going to look at the under because I thought it was a little bit too high of a total to begin with. Now we find out there's some potentially really bad weather conditions in addition to wind coming up. And the thing is, Belichick, he doesn't play Peyton Manning the way he plays everybody else in the NFL. What he does normally is play deep safeties. He'll give up the short passes. He wants Manning to go on long drives, essentially daring Peyton Manning to run draw plays. Well, when they met a year ago in November, that's just what happened. Denver had 280 yards rushing in that game. And that one ended up going over the total in a strange one. But the playoff game was way under the total. In addition, these defenses have vastly improved from a year ago. Denver was decimated with injuries on defense late last season. They're healthier now. They're faster, and they're playing better. And the Patriots, too. The secondary have been awful the last 4 years until this year. They've been top 3 against the pass all season long. It's because of Brandon Bauer coming in as well as Darrelle Revis. So this defenses are better on both teams. Throw in the weather, and I think Belichick's going to allow these long drives or prefer these long drives. So Manning is probably not going to be the shootout that a lot of people think. I'd say 26-23, under 50 points in this one.